So good afternoon everybody, my name is Alex Scott. For those of you who have not met me before, I am a business consultant at Intercad. I am tasked to overseeing a certain portion of the existing users as yourselves. I think I've met quite a few of you here before. And thank you for attending this first of a series of webinars that I will be holding in relation to DriveWorks, the DriveWorks products which runs in line with SolidWorks. Today, I will be talking more on DriveWorks Express. However, it is, like I said, part of an entire series of presentations and I won't be able to squeeze everything into one. So let's start off here today first. Now, for today, this webinar is tasked to address four main questions that I encounter very often when I'm out in the field. Mainly, what on earth is DriveWorks Express? I get a lot of people asking me this when I ask, have you used DriveWorks Express? And the most common answer I get is, what is it? Alright, of course, after I explain that, it would be good to know what the benefits of the functionality is, and of course finding out how it can work. Now, there are very specific applications for DriveWorks Express, but what I'm going to do here is to give an overview to everyone so that we are all on the same page first. But these are effectively the four areas that I'm going to be dealing with today on this presentation. Alright. Now, to better appreciate what DriveWorks Express really is, these are three basic questions that you should ask yourself. Do you deal with the typical designs which are same but different? That means your products have a generic product line perhaps. Okay, it could be generic in the sense of an entire product range, or it can be a specific item within your product itself. Are they same but different? It could be a bracket and you keep producing similar brackets that are slightly different, but the generic design is the same. And do you find yourself going through a process of having to repeat things that you have done before? Alright, very often we have designs that just differ slightly, but we have to keep changing that slightly part of the design very often. And most importantly, can you attach a set of rules, a form of logic, if you may like, to your designs? That is very important, because unless you're able to define a rule of how you would govern a certain set of changes, you're going to be faced with the challenge of how you are going to drive your designs. Alright, so these are three questions, and if you answer yes to at least one of them, then chances are we are looking at the right thing. Is DriveWorks the solution for everybody? Well, I have to say no. Not everyone will appreciate what the software can do, and it really boils down to questions such as this: repetition and automation. These 2 points here, if it applies, then you'll find that it's very useful. Okay, now before I go on to the next slide, let me just check to see if they have any newcomers to this presentation here. So far so good. Audio is still fine so far. Alright. Right, let's continue. Now, DriveWorks Express is a rule-based design automation tool. That's as simply as I can put it. What it does is that it helps you automate your design process, the churning out of parts, drawings, and assemblies. And it's driven by a set of rules that is determined by you, the user. The system cannot tell you what you need to do. You need to tell it how you want your product to behave. Of course, the benefits are obvious once you think about it. Being able to automate the repetitive work in your day-to-day processes, and being able to ensure that you have a set of rules to drive your changes. Think of how much time and effort you would save, and of course everyone knows that time is money. So the ultimate outcome is, think of the savings that this product could actually help you with. Now, before we think that DriveWorks Express is the be-all and end-all of things, it is not. Alright, DriveWorks Express is actually part of a suite of products, and we like to call the DriveWorks Express the entry-level design automation, although I feel entry-level might be selling it short, because by itself, and you'll see at the end of this presentation, it can actually do quite a bit by itself. However, everyone likes big brothers, I think. So it's got a bigger brother called DriveWorks Solo. Now, in addition to being able to automate your design process, it allows you to even take it to the next level. Imagine being able to automate the design process and have quotes churned out in relation to the new products that you have designed. You don't even need to go through the quotation process. You can have the system set up in such a way where quotes can be generated in relation to a new design that you produce all the time. And of course, there are several other benefits, but that's one of the main ones. And the big brother has an even bigger brother called DriveWorks Pro, which allows you web-based functionality that allows you a whole heap of information that you can control. But I'm not going to go into these things. I'm just going to be talking about DriveWorks Express today. What the intention of this slide is to give you an idea of what DriveWorks belongs to. Alright, but like I said, let's get rid of DriveWorks Pro, and Solo, and concentrate today on DriveWorks Express. Alright, now doing an attendance check here again. Any new points being brought up? No, good. Okay, this is the last time I'm going to check for latecomers. Now, so we're going to be emphasizing on DriveWorks Express today. What does it do? How does it work? Now, in general, you just need to go through these 4 steps in order to set up an environment to work with DriveWorks Express. And I'm going to just step through with a very simple example. Due to time here, I won't have time to go through building an entire product. But in general, these are the 4 steps that you will need to more or less adhere to when you're working with the SolidWorks and DriveWorks Express. And we're going to go through this step by step. Alright, so let's take a look at the first one, setting up of a model. For today's example, I'm going to just make use of SolidWorks 2012. However, anyone who's on 2011 or 2010 will find that whatever I'm doing here, more or less with regard to DriveWorks Express, the functionality will be very, very similar. Okay, but I'm using 2012 because that's the latest version that I have. Now let's just start off here by calling out what I have. I've got a blank part here already, and for the purpose of today's presentation, I'm going to just create a very simple 2-piece sheet metal cabinet from the multi-body design methodology. So let's start off here by creating a simple sketch. Now this little cabinet that I'm going to create here will be roughly this size. Let's give it 45 and an overall height of maybe 65. It doesn't really matter for now what it's going to be. And let's chamfer this up here by maybe 20. Alright, so this is going to be the profile of my sheet metal part. Now before I continue, please bear in mind that I'm using an example of a sheet metal product. DriveWorks Express can be applied to any type of product that you can design on SolidWorks. Okay, there's no way I can come up with an example, of course, that would cover every industry. I'm just using a sheet metal product as an example here. Alright, so from my sketch here, let's go on to just create the thickness. But you know what, before I do that, let's go back to my sketch. Okay, and what I like to do now is I like to just rename this. Now this is a very good practice that you should consider adopting. Let's rename this dimension here, and you'll see the effect of it later when I start to create my DriveWorks parameters. But for now, let's give it the height, and this would be the depth. Alright, take note that for these are the 2 dimensions, this 45 here and the 65 here. These are the 2 parameters that I would want to drive with DriveWorks Express later, and I have renamed them. So from here, let me just go on to create my part. So drag this out here. And there we have it. This is going to form the basis of my 2-piece cabinet. It's not exactly the most exciting design. We are not talking about SolidWorks today, so I'm not going to be too worried about that. Now from here, let's go on to sheet metal, and I like to just convert this part here to sheet metal. I'll accept the defaults for now and just use the bottom face here as my starting point, and let's go on to select these edges for bending. This one here, this, and this. What I'm doing here is, for those who might not be able to follow or are wondering, I'm just converting a solid block to a sheet metal part. Okay, accept this, and this is my first sheet metal part. I'm not going to be too worried about the details of the sheet metal part because today we are not talking about sheet metal design, just creating a generic part here. Excuse me. So from here, I've created my first part. Like I mentioned just now, I will be creating, just save this up here, I will be creating a multi-body sheet metal part. So let's go on to create the second body on my sheet metal part here. Alright, and on the right plane, I'm just going to create the lid for this little case here. And let's go on to make use of this edge and this edge here. Alright, and from here onwards, let's go on to just move this out to this point. And not exactly the most exciting of parts, I know, but you will find that there is a reason for this later. And let's go on to just add a small lip here. Alright, and I'll just dimension this. It doesn't really matter. Like I said, we're not talking about the sheet metal design today. I'm just creating a generic part. After I'm done with this, let's go on to create the lid itself, which is this part. From this part here, I'll go on to create a base flange, and I'll drag it out here. Let's give it an up to surface to ensure that the lid and the rest of the part is going to be the same. Now, the rest of the details of the sheet metal part, I won't be too worried about it, because like I said, today we are not dealing with sheet metal design. What I'm going to do, however, is to add one more piece of detail up here, which is a small cutout. Just imagine we need to add a hinge over here. Alright, and in order to do that, I'm just going to create a simple cutout on this edge here. Alright, and just add some smarts to the parts here. From this edge, perhaps I like it to be 5. And this is going to be a 5mm groove again. And for this, let's give a 2mm. Right. And from here now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create a cut from this sketch here. So this is a solid. I just drag it down here to create a cut. There we go. And this will be my cutout. For now, finally, the last piece of modeling that I'm going to be running today would be this. I'm just going to create a reference curve here to define my patterning direction for this cutout. Let's give it from here to here. Doesn't really matter for now. And from this edge here, and this, let's give it a clearance of maybe 10. Okay. So this would serve as the edge that I will be using to. Oops, it's interesting. Not sure why that popped up. Yes. Okay, this would serve as the edge for my patterning reference. So what happens now is I'm going to just pattern this cutout that I have here. Let's go to do a curve-driven pattern along this direction here, and I like it to be equally spaced. I like to pattern this cutout. All right. So what I've created here effectively is a simple concept of a lid with a sheet metal part with a lid here and all that. And this is what I will be using as the basis to talk about my DriveWorks Express functionality. Alright, this is a multi-body part here, so let's update this. And I'll go on to create an exploded view also for convenience. Let's go create a new exploded view for this. I'll just drag this out here and maybe have it move up a bit. There we go. So, and I'll top it off here with a drawing. Let's give it an assembly drawing here. Alright. And the view palette, I will just grab hold of this, drag this in. Alright. And let's go on to drag the front. And this. Alright. Let's just leave the drawing at that. Okay. I'll close this off here and save. That's all we need to do, okay? Again, we are not talking about sheet metal design, so I will stop here. You can, of course, add more details to your designs as you like. Now, at this stage in time, what we want is we would like to automate the design process to come up with different customized sizes of this little enclosure here with a lid. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to step you through some of the functionality in DriveWorks Express. Due to the constraints of time, I won't be able to do everything, but I'm going to talk about two main things. Alright, now to access DriveWorks Express, you will need to go to either the Evaluate tab and select the DriveWorks Express icon, or you could go to Tools, DriveWorks Express. Either way, it's the same. It doesn't really matter. I like this because I like nice and big icons. Excuse me. Now, by clicking on this icon, what happens is you fire up the DriveWorks Express wizard that allows you to start up your whole DriveWorks Express definition process. Alright, and we always have to start off here by creating a database. We are starting from scratch here. So I will just call it, say, DWX intro. I can give it any name I like. If you notice, this is a Microsoft Access database file. That means it is editable with Microsoft Access, and this would be something that would be useful down the road, but not today. Okay, and the system has asked me to capture the models. I will say I want to use the current open model, and I hit next. So what I need to do right now is to tell the system what are the parameters I want to control. Alright, as you can see, there are a whole list of options down here, from captured models to the dimensions and properties that we can work with. I'm just going to talk about a few of them just to give everyone a highlight of what DriveWorks Express does, how it works and all. We'll go into more detail in a later webinar. For today, we'll be talking about the dimensions. Let's take a look at the dimensions that we can work with. Now, I selected the dimensions folder here, and on this, oops, let's go pin this down. Alright, now watch what happens when I select the 65. Remember, it's height at sketch 1. By selecting this, not only does the system recognize that address, it also automatically adds the name height. Let's add this, and let's do the same for depth. Same thing here. Now, what I did not do earlier was I did not rename this. It's still called D1 at boss extrude. So when I select this, the system has no idea what name it should be giving. So it's prompting me to give the information. I'll say width. Really imaginative name here. I'll say width. Now, one more property I would like to control today is the patterning instance. Alright. Now I know that we can control the patterning instances with equations. That is perfectly fine. What I'd like to do today is I'd like to show you, everyone here, a different approach. How you can set up a logical rule to control the definitions. Okay, and let's call this instance. That's it. Add. Now in addition to this, I would like to have every customized cabinet, if you may call it a cabinet, to be created with a corresponding drawing. So what I can do is I can go down to the drawing and configuration tab and use the drawing I created just now as my drawing template. Alright, that's it. Okay, we won't talk too much about the other things like the custom properties and all because we don't have time here today. From the capturing of parameters, we go on to setting up the forms. So let me flip back first to PowerPoints. What we've done is we've set up a model and we've defined the relevant parameters. That's what we have done so far. I created a model with the dimensions that I need, then I set up the relevant parameters. Okay. Now, up to this stage in time, what you have created is effectively a part, a model, a part, an assembly, and a drawing maybe, and you've told the system, okay, these are the dimensions, these are the different parameters that I want to control. Now you can control more than just dimensions, of course. You can control features and so on and so forth. Alright, now we're going to go on to the difficult part, which is setting up the template, the table that you will need to work with, and the rules. And that's the tricky part. And usually what happens is that for me, I find that a lot of users face a challenge on this level. Alright, so let's go on back to SOLIDWORKS here. Now for starters, we will need to set up a unique identifier. What DriveWorks is going to do, it is going to create a new model every time. So we will need to define a rule that will enable us to generate a model with a unique file name. I will just call it today, for example, customer name. Okay, this means this entry will be appended to every new model, or maybe customer ID, because customer name might actually be repeated. Not very good. And you've got a whole heap of options excuse me, to define this information. For today, I'll just select a text box and I will have this as a mandatory input. That means you are required to enter this piece of information. Alright, and this is what you call the form design. Can go on to add a few other things, for example, like the that's called the height. Okay, now for the height, perhaps I would like a numeric text box. Now unlike the text box, the numeric text box only accepts numeric characters, and you can go on to define, in fact you are required to define, excuse me, the limits. For example, in this case here, let's define the limits to be between 28.5 and maybe no, not 28, this is the height, so let's give it maybe 50 and the maximum value to be 120. Alright, and you go to it next here, and I go on to add a few others. Height, I need the depth. The depth, same thing here, I will define a numeric text box. Okay, and the numeric text box here will be, let's give the depth to be maybe let's say again 50 to maybe 155. Now as for the width, maybe I decided that I would like to use a spin button. Alright, so let's give a width here, and for my width, my minimum value would be 28 and my 28.5, no, not very good, let's give it 30. Okay, and my maximum value would be 125 and the increment will be 5. That means I'm allowing the potential user to define the width in increments of 5. That's all he or she will be allowed to do. Alright, and that's what we will require the user to input. This is the form design level of it. This is the interface that anyone who accesses DriveWorks Express to drive this model will be interfacing with. You could of course test the table and all. I won't really need to worry about that for now. This is a simple table. What I do is I go on to next and define the rules. And what the system lists down here right now are the different kinds of rules that are required based on the input that we have defined. First, of course, we need to have a file name rule defined. How do we want this piece of information to be created? So I check on the file name, edit, and do a next here. So what kind of file name do I want to create? I want my file name to have the customer ID, whether it's a number, alphanumeric value, etc., to be appended to the end of the file name. Can you do other sorts of rules? Yes, you can. I will be showing some examples at the end of this presentation to show you how much flexibility the system gives you here. But for simplicity today, I'll just have the system append customer ID as the parameter at the end of the name. Then we go back here, and let's go down to the dimensions. There are 4 dimension rules that we need to set up. Height, I'm going to double click on height, and I select the inputs. You can of course key in the names by yourself if you know exactly what they are, but for simplicity I like to use the pull down so that I can keep track of what I've done here. Input, let's give depth, and the width would be the input width on the table. Now for instance, we are not going to have a numeric entry because on the table previously we didn't have an entry for the instance. What I'm going to create is a simple rule. I will show you how simple it is to create a logic-based rule to define the number of cutouts based on the design. Alright, let's take a look at this. I'm going to use logic today, if. Okay, I'm going to use an if-then situation, and I will say that if the width, okay, if the width is less than 50, then 2, otherwise 3. So what I'm defining here is that if the width of the product is less than 50, I would like to have 2 hinges. Otherwise, please give me 3 cutouts, because it will require 3 hinges. This is what you mean by a design rule that you would define. Of course, there's a whole host of options that you could play around with, mathematical as well as logic, or a combination of both. I won't go too much in detail today. I hit an OK here, and that's it. Let's go back to our PowerPoint slide one more time to recap what we've done so far. Now, we've set up the model, we've defined the parameters, we've set up the rules. Now, all you need to do is to run the project. And how do you do that? You hit next here, and what we have here is a nice little table that gives us customer ID, height, and the width information. Alright, so let's give the customer ID. Let's start off with an Intercad 001. This was the first order from Intercad for this cabinet. Really exciting one. Now the system tells me now that it requires a height parameter between 50 and 120. I would like something 86 millimeters. The depth, maybe I like it to be 100. And the overall width, I'd like it to be a 60 millimeter width. And when I hit create, what the system will do is it regenerates a new model for me. Now if you notice, as it creates this information, the drawing information is also created from scratch, brand new. Plus, remember the ID that I created just now. The SolidWorks automatically appends the name Intercad 001 to DriveWorks intro. So what happens there is that we get a new model being generated. Let's go, no, I no need to do this. Let's go tile this to the left and let's tile this to the right. This on the right here is DriveWorks intro. This was the original model. This on the left here is the new model that was generated from scratch by DriveWorks Express. And this is what DriveWorks Express allows you to do. It allows you to automate the entire recreation process of your designs very, very quickly. In addition to that, we had a simple drawing created in the background. So let's go open the drawing and take a look at what happens. This is the new drawing here. Okay, as usual, there's no space here because I created a very long name, but information here has also been updated. This is what DriveWorks Express is in a nutshell. Like I said, there's a lot more that it can do. I'm not going to be able to go into everything in one shot, but this is an overview of DriveWorks Express. Let's try running this one more time. Let's create this. Again, I like to run this. Now I can hit run, or I can just do a next here. It's the same thing. Let's give a customer ID, and let's give customer ABC first order of the day. The overall height here to be maybe 65, and the depth here to be 65. We want a square box, and this time we want a width of just 40. And let's see what happens. Okay, if you notice here, this time the number of cuts that have been created are 2. That's because the rule has been set in such a way that if the width is less than 50, you get 2 cutouts. Otherwise, you would get 3. Alright, this is the original model. Now I'll save this up here. Like I said, in a nutshell, this is what DriveWorks Express offers. Now, that's what we have done here. Of course, the question is, you've gone through all these steps. What are the next steps? Okay, how do you proceed from here? What I've done here is I've very quickly shown you just a sliver of what DriveWorks Express is able to do. Now, there are several other things that I will probably get asked at the end of this presentation. One of them is, where do I start? Well, there are many ways you can start. You can start by checking out how you can automate your products. Give it some thought, how you can speed up your products that you're working on right now, and start from there. The other thing is that we run regular seminars, half-day seminars in our office that will step you through practically the whole width of setting up models, how we go through all the different options that I did not cover in this presentation. Okay. If you're interested in attending one of these seminars or training classes, please drop me an email. I will have my email up on the screen at the end of this presentation also. But very important, you need to identify your products to see how you could set up your rules to define this information. That's how you would start. Alright? So, just to recap again, DriveWorks Express is a rule-based design automation tool, and you've seen how easy it is to set up. There is no programming involved. I have to emphasize that. I've met users all around the region. I used to cover other places apart from Australia, and I've met a lot of users who have been scared of DriveWorks Express because they somehow felt that there was programming involved. Well, you saw what I did. There's no programming involved. It is a very structured wizard-based interface that allows you to very quickly and easily set up your designs. What is important, however, is that your designs have to be set up to support the changes that you want. It is not something meant to solve design problems. Your design should already be robust enough to be automated, and not you cannot go in and expect DriveWorks Express to fix the problems that you can't automate. Alright, it's just a thought for the day. More importantly, DriveWorks Express is also included in every seat of SolidWorks. That means if you are a SolidWorks user from, I believe, SolidWorks 2009 onwards, you would already have this functionality built into your system. Alright, it doesn't matter what level or package of SolidWorks you have. DriveWorks Express is already built into your system. If you have questions on this, please let me know. If you're running SolidWorks 2010 and you don't have DriveWorks Express, please give me a call. There's probably something wrong somewhere which I should be able to help you fix. Alright. Now, we've got a bit more time here, and earlier in the presentation I mentioned about showing some examples. Some of these examples here are among my favorites. I really like going into these examples because they give a very good idea of the various applications of DriveWorks Express. Some of us watching this presentation here might have seen some of these examples before. I apologize in advance if I'm repeating myself, but these are my favorite samples and I love showing them. Alright, let's take a look at a few of them. Let's go browse for my recent documents, and let's start off with this window assembly. I love this window assembly. It's a very nice example of how you can make use of DriveWorks Express to create highly varied designs that are slightly different. Now this is a typical case here. Let's take a look at this. Let's take a section view to have a look. Now what I have here is a generic design of a window, and the basic template of it is a double glazed window. Alright, but as we all know, windows are windows. They've got a frame, they've got glass. That's about it. Okay, what varies are the number of openings, sizes, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do today is that I'll just we're just going to run a DriveWorks Express wizard on this little product here, and let's take a look at how it works. Alright, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to change over to a database that's suitable for this model here, which would mean somewhere in here in my DriveWorks collection, this is my window. No window. Here we go, window. Alright, and if you notice here right now, I've got a new table popping up. Obviously, a database has been set up for this with a completely new table and all, and it's in inches. I do apologize for that. This was obviously set up for the Americans and people who still haven't updated to the metric system, but the whole concept is exactly the same. Now before I do anything, I'd like to just highlight the file name, because again, earlier in my setting up, I created a very simple template of a customer ID as the file name. Let's take a look at what happens here right now. I'd like a window of maybe 68 inches tall, 68 inches wide. No, maybe just make a narrower window, 48-inch window with an overall height of maybe 110, and the type single or double glazed. Well, you know, it's summer now, so it's coming to summer, so I will try for a single glazed window, and I like it to be 2 panes. And I just hit create. I let the system take over for me and generate a completely new window for me. Now as I talk here, you'll be able to see how the system is actually recreating all the models that are required. Now bear in mind that this is an assembly. Okay, this is not a sheet metal design product either. So this is just to re-emphasize the point that it is not product specific, in the sense that it doesn't mean that you can only use it for sheet metal parts or machine parts. It doesn't matter. Alright, so what we've created here is, in a while, the drawings in the background, by the way. Okay, and there we go. So we have an interesting outcome here. Alright, we've got the glass being a bit smaller than the overall frame. Why did that happen? Well, that's one of the rules that was set by the designer who set up this model here. But what's more important is that you will notice that the file name here is a bit more complicated than a single customer ID that's been appended. It also appends, it also appends the parameters that have been included. For example, the overall height, width, as well as the number of panes. In addition to that, let's take a look at the drawings. I'll just open the drawings here, and you have a brand new drawing created, complete with the bill of materials already updated for you. So what happens here is that you can automate this whole process. Imagine creating an assembly with drawings in the background and not having to worry too much about how things are created in the background here. This is one of the examples I love showing, and of course this is the example. As you can see, still untouched. We can always recreate a new model. Another example I love to show is this one here, which involves the shelves. Nice and simple product, and this is for the woodworking industry. Very nice little thing here. You've got a 1, 2, 3. You've got a 4-tier shelf here right now, something you buy from either Bunnings, maybe IKEA or something. And imagine being able to reconfigure a product very quickly for your customers. That's exactly what DriveWorks Express is meant to do. Alright, let me just activate DriveWorks Express one more time, and I'll change my database to the let's go to the shelves. Alright, let's take a look at this one. It would be interesting. Now, right now there are some default values already set here. Let's not bother about that. Let's take a different value. Maybe I like maybe a 550 height. A depth of 200 sounds good. Now maybe I'll give it 210. The width, I don't want such a wide one. I maybe want 325, and I don't need so many shelves. Let's reduce it to 3 shelves. Alright, and I'd like to even change the material type maybe to pine. I like pine. And you hit create. Same thing again. This is another example of how you can drive your models. Now notice that even the material type can be selected and changed accordingly to the selection of the user, which is what's happening right now live, complete with all the required pins and so on and so forth. And what happens as usual in the background is that you get the drawings being updated also. So this is a very handy example, and those are the bolts and all that. And of course the bolts are now nicely placed outside so that you can actually tell how many bolts are needed and all. But this is your before and after. Once again, things like the file names have been updated accordingly. So enough of DriveWorks Express. I think I've spoken enough for the day today. What I like to highlight to finish on my presentation here is that DriveWorks Express is not only for complete products. Very often we tend to think, no, my whole product is too complex. But you might have sub-assemblies, you might have modules in your designs that can be automated. Sometimes it might be too complicated to automate the entire product, but all the different modules, all the different segments of your products, some of them might be able to benefit from the automation. So don't look at your product line strictly from a top level standpoint. Take a look at the different modules within your designs itself. You'll be surprised what you'll be able to find. Alright, and with this, if there are any questions, I'd like to open the floor now to questions if there's anyone who'd like to ask anything. Alright, if you'd like to ask some questions, you could just key your questions over at the chat window. Be more than happy to answer them. No questions? Oh, good. I just saw one question here. One moment. How do you link multiple model parameters in a DriveWorks logic-driven data? That's a very good question. I guess I need to start off by asking, what do you mean by multiple model parameters? Is it? Could you help me out here by elaborating on that? We're off to a good start already. You've caught me at a question that I can't answer. Okay. Okay, good. How do we find out more? Alright. While I wait for the elaboration on the first question about how do you link what multiple model parameters are, doing a course on DriveWorks Express, drop me an email. I'll give you my email in a while. Alright, my email will appear at the end of this presentation. Drop me an email, and we do have we do intend to hold regular courses on this. Yes, so you can come to us anytime. Alright. The next question, if you have table-driven models set up, are they easy to bring into DriveWorks? Now, DriveWorks Express, unfortunately, there's a limitation to DriveWorks Express. It does not support external import of tables. In order to enable the functionality, you will need to take a look at the big brother of it, which is the DriveWorks Solo. DriveWorks Solo allows you to import models with table-driven data, whether it is on text-based tables or Microsoft Excel tables. Hope that answers your question. Oh, parameters from one model. Alright, not a problem. Okay, back to the question about multiple models. For that case, what you would do is I guess if I take a look at your model, I'll be able to answer that more in detail. But on a generic level, when you have an assembly with multiple models, you would set up the parameters in the context of the assembly. By setting up the parameters in the assembly, you can actually extract the parameters from all the different models itself. Alright, drop me an email on the multi-models thing. I would like to discuss more in detail offline, because I won't be able to explain it online this way, if it's alright with you. Can you have the next question, can you have differently configured models in an assembly? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. If you remember the shelf example that I showed just now, the material types are actually controlled by configurations. So you can actually choose different configurations of a model, and you can have DriveWorks call out the different configurations. Alright. That's a very good question actually. In fact, if we could hold the questions here for a while, I could show an example of a configuration-driven DriveWorks example, and then I'll come back to the questions. Okay, just let me sidetrack back to SolidWorks again. Okay, let me just close this for a while, and I'll just go back to this. This is another example that I really like because it makes use of configurations. And that example I have, browse recent examples, is this one here. This one, there's not a lot of changes in dimensions. What you have are changes in the parameters of configurations, because if you notice, each of these sub-assemblies actually come with different configurations, the motor sub-assemblies and all that. And for something like this, what you would do is that you end up having, oops, let me just change my database to something appropriate. Okay, my DriveWorks Express, this is my power pack, here we go. Alright, now job number, let's just give it 11111. Pump type, if you notice here, what we are choosing here are the different configurations. From the 2858, I'll change it to a roper type motor, which effectively is a configuration, and a motor type. These are all the configurations that are available. Right now they are using an M3615. I will use a different model here, the 3M, and the overall width to be maybe 400, and I will not want the full guard. So that is again another possibility when I hit a create here. Of course, there's some resizing of the frame and all that, but what we are switching here right now on the motor standpoint are the different motor types, and those are just configurations. So yes, you can control configurations from DriveWorks Express at the same time, and of course the drawings and so on and so forth are created accordingly. Right? Let's flip back to my PowerPoint and go back to the questions. Excuse me. Most of my files are set up with DriveWorks, but the cost of DriveWorks Solo is prohibitive. I see. With regard to that, I guess you could drop me an email and we can see how we could put that. If this is the direction that you would like to take, I'll be more than happy to meet up with you and see how we can work out a strategy to potentially get you running on DriveWorks Express if possible. Would you like that to happen? If you would just drop me an email, again I will be showing everybody my email at the end of this presentation here. And yes, please give this product a thought, and if you would like to explore it in greater depth, I'll be more than happy to take questions offline also. Alright? Any more questions? Are we out of questions or just being too shy? Anyway, no worries there. Yes, no problem. You're welcome. All right. What other questions here? Can you create logical rules that will change configurations? Most definitely, yes. Okay. I've seen cases where you can say, for example, you want that, like for example, you've got you set a parameter, maybe the overall size of the casing, to have to be within a certain limit. Now, if it exceeds a certain limit, then you want your design to use a different configuration of the product because the original configuration isn't suitable for the application. So, short answer is yes. It can set. You can set up a logical rule to drive configurations itself. In fact, I just did a few. Welcome, Steve. All right. By the way, you might see the name Mike Gilliland popping up on the screen. Just for your reference, I'm not Mike Gilliland. I'm just using his login for GoToMeeting. Okay. Any more questions? Last call for questions. Can you use weights as parameters? I believe in 2012 you can. I've not explored that fully yet, but I believe in 2011, but in 2012 you can define weight as a parameter. Yes. More questions? All right. I've got 5 minutes more of my presentation time. I'm open to any questions really, but you're welcome. Okay, I hope everyone found this very useful. Just for everyone's information, I will be cutting a video of this. In fact, this presentation is being recorded as we speak, and you'll all get a copy of this presentation itself. So in case you get something that you'd like to just review this presentation again, that video hopefully will come in very handy. All right. Now, one last thing before I go offline is my email address. This is my email address here. It's alex.kok@intercad.com.au. I normally recommend contacting me by email because half the time I'm actually out in the field, which means if you call me on my desk, I'm not there. And that's the best way to ensure that I get your question. So if you do get any thoughts along the way, can it do this? Would it be able to do that? How would you do this? Or even to find out about training. I think there were 1 or 2 questions about training earlier. Please drop me an email. I'll be more than happy to take this up with you offline. All right. Everybody okay here? Okay, last call for questions. All good? Right. Right, thank you then everyone. This, like I said, is the first of a series of DriveWorks related presentations. It's just the first one to set everybody thinking about it. I will be doing a few more in the near future, and I look forward to seeing everyone here again. Once again, my name is Alex Kok. I'm business consultant for Intercad, and this has been a DriveWorks presentation brought to you by Intercad. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye-bye.